Well, Sully's on the couch and he's ready to go, and I'm here and I'm ready to go, and I assume you're ready to go. And I don't know where Scout is. She may or may not join us. We'll have to see. Pardon me. Today I want to talk with you about the causes of World War One. Now, this is a big subject, so I'm going to break it into a couple of different episodes. I think there's going to be at least three. There may end up being more than that. But today we're going to start with Germany. So let me share my screen here with my mad skills, because there's maps today. So you got to see the maps. And there's pictures, because you ought to see the people that we're talking about. That's what. Okay, let's click that again. There we go. Okay. Now, in my lifetime, and so therefore in all of your lifetimes, because I'm a whole lot older than, well, most of you. There could be other people, I don't know, but most of you, I'm a lot older than, and that's okay. Germany has been at most two states. In my lifetime, a lot of it was divided between East Germany and West Germany. That happened after World War II. We were kind of used to that, but we're going back much further, back before World War I, and back before Germany was actually a single country. Look at this map here. This, everything in a color that's not this kind of yellowy white, I guess cream color, is Germany today, or what became Germany. It's not exactly the same borders now, because some of this has been taken into other countries, but all of this was what was considered the German states with an S, because it was a huge number of little bitty dinky kingdoms and principalities. They call it a principality if the ruling figure is a prince and not a king. I don't know how you get to be the ruling. Why don't you just promote yourself to king? I don't know. I didn't find a good explanation for that anywhere. I guess that's just, the way life is. If you're a prince, you're a prince, and that's that. But that's not true. But anyway, there's this huge number, all these little teeny tiny, each one of these that's a different color is a different German state, and there's scads of them. Look, at one point they said there were as many as 300 little tiny different states, and then sometimes they would intermarry, and so the two states would join, and then they'd marry somebody else in that state, and the next prince or king would marry somebody else, and that state might join in. And so that kind of happened. And there's weird noises out there in the porch. Anyway, it's probably Scout. That happened a lot. And so that's why this changed over time. All of these people shared a similar language. They all spoke German. But they all had different customs, because the people in what became Bavaria had different customs from what became Munich, and that sort of thing. They all kind of regarded each other as related groups, but they were not united groups. Okay, so that's the way things went until several German states helped defeat Napoleon. And this actually involved the man we're going to talk about in just a second. This was driven mostly, there began to be this push to nationalize, to unify Germany and make it a German state, like France was a country, and Italy had become a country just recently, and that kind of inspired a lot of the university students, or what we would call college students, and the intellectuals, the people that just sit around and think all the time. The majority of the people were not interested in this, so it didn't get a lot of push. And so in 1848, there was actually an attempt to create a national Reichstag, which is what they called their parliament or Congress. And that's what they wanted to do. And it failed miserably. Everybody was like, yeah, we don't care what they think. We're going to do our stuff in our own little country over here, and we're not going to be bothered with any of that. And I stuck this picture of Napoleon on because that's who we were talking about. A lot of what happens next is driven by a single region and a single man. And so let's talk about the region first. This was the region of Prussia. Prussia was mostly, well, in the eastern part of Germany. It kind of goes all the way over to here. But anything here that's in the green was considered Prussia. It is the most militarily developed state. It had the best army, it had the best navy of any of the German provinces, any of the German states. And Austria was concerned enough about it. Austria's down here. See, this is Austria-Hungary. Austria was concerned enough about it because it's over here kind of close to Austria. It comes down and touches Austria. They were concerned enough about it that they moved against Prussia a couple of different times to try to keep Prussia from getting too big and too strong, because they were concerned that Prussia was the one that might at some point create a military problem for Austria. So that was the one state. Now the one man is a man named Otto von Bismarck. He was appointed the minister president of Prussia in 1862. He unconstitutionally moved to consolidate power into that position and make it a much stronger position than it really was meant to be. And he set out to vastly improve the Prussian army. Now, this is his picture when he is an older guy. He was a much younger man when he was doing this other stuff. And his goal was to unify Germany into a single country, a single unit under Prussian control. And he was very famous for saying unification under it may be necessary to use blood and iron. So he was perfectly willing to do this with guns and through warfare for people that didn't really want to be unified. So unification actually happens in 1871. Before 1871, a couple of different wars had happened. In 1866, not long after Bismarck came into power, Prussia and Italy joined up and defeated Austria in the 7 Weeks' War and pushed Austria back and smacked them pretty good and made them leave Prussia alone. In 1871, Prussia and several other German states had defeated France in the Franco-Prussian War. And after France had surrendered, Bismarck gathered all of the heads of the German states together and basically said, okay, that's it. Prussia's in charge. The rest of you guys are underneath Prussia. We are now the German state. And everything in both colors of the orange here became Germany. This is the first time in its history it had been unified. Hello, Scout. Just keep walking. It had been unified into a single unit entity. Don't do that. We're not having an earthquake. It's just Scout. And now, pardon me, now it's what we think of as Germany. The map is considerably different than what we know it today, but we'll get to that eventually. Okay, so since now they have an empire or a single country, they need to have an emperor. And the word for emperor in German is Kaiser, and so Kaiser is what they called their emperor. Now, the first one that they had was named Frederick, Emperor Frederick. But we're not going to talk too much about him because he died in 1868, I think. And his son, Kaiser Wilhelm, came to the throne. Now, William II, or Wilhelm, if you're going to pronounce it in German, Wilhelm II was born January 27th of 1859, and his full name was Frederick Wilhelm Victor Albert. And he was born in a town called Potsdam, which is near Berlin today, which is near what we call Berlin today. His parents were the Emperor Frederick III and Victoria, who was Queen Victoria of England's oldest daughter. And we will have to talk some point about Victoria. And her children, because she had a whole bunch of children. I want to say it was like 8 or 9 children eventually. And of course, these are all prince and princesses. The oldest son will be king of England, but then they got all these spare kids running around that need some place to go be. And so they married these children all to different little countries that had kings or princes, and or queens or princesses, and married all of these people out into Europe. Then all of them had a bunch of kids also, and all of them got married off to little countries. And so by the time we get here, practically everybody in power in Europe is related to Queen Victoria and to each other. So Kaiser Wilhelm II is a grandson of Queen Victoria of England. He was also born with a malformed arm. It never grew to its full size. It was kind of a little small arm. A lot of people, a lot of scholars believe that this may explain some of the stuff he got up to and the weird stuff that he did, and why he vacillated between being not very brave and thinking he had to be the bravest person alive. And you can kind of see how that might happen. And he was raised by his mother, his British mother, to believe in the concept of a warrior king. So that, you know, he was going to be the king, at the very least, of his little country, and as it turned out, of all of Germany. And so he needed to be a strong warrior and perform his duties with honor. And he was raised to believe that by his mother. In 1881, he married the Princess Augusta Victoria of, and I'm going to butcher these German names, Schleswig-Holstein, Sonderburg, Ostenburg. So it sounds to me like 4 little tiny states had gotten together and become a slightly larger state, back like I was talking about how they married and combined and married and combined. This is her picture here, and this is their oldest son, Wilhelm III. And that's Wilhelm II. She was described by her husband as plain and unimaginative and having no talents. Girls, or guys for that matter, if the person that you are dating and think you really want to be around describes you like this, you don't want to be around this person. Go find somebody who thinks you're wonderful. This is terrifying. This description to me is terrifying. She had little in common with Wilhelm, but they did manage to have 6 sons and 1 daughter. He became Emperor of Germany when his father Frederick died of cancer in 1888, and Wilhelm was 29. He became the Emperor of Germany, the Kaiser of Germany. He was not a great ruler. One of the very first things he did was force Bismarck to resign. And remember, Bismarck was the one who was responsible for Germany being a country in the first place. But he was about 75 at this time. He was starting to slip a little, and he wasn't quite as on point as he should have been. He had made huge enemies with France back during the Franco-Prussian War, when Germany had defeated France. France was now an enemy of Germany. They hated Germany. Wilhelm then set out to basically alienate most of the rest of Europe. He was giving interviews, newspaper interviews, about how most of the German people didn't think that England or Great Britain was that great a country or that strong. And he really thought that, you know, if it came down to it, Germany could defeat England in a war, which didn't sit really well with the English people. They were not real keen on this. There was a treaty that had been signed several years before that made Russia and Germany allies. That treaty expired because, you know, these treaties tend to have a length of time. They're not just forever, but they tend to have a length of time. He did not renew that treaty with Russia, which left Russia free to form alliances with France, who was already an enemy of Germany. So these were things that were not maybe the best ways to handle this stuff, but that's what he did. And that's all I've got to show you about him. There is more to this story, but we'll get into that as we get through the underlying causes and move into World War I. We'll tie it all together and it'll make pretty good sense, I hope. So that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, post them in the comment section. Like and share, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, however you're feeling about this. I hope that I will see you next time. So, Sully, I think we're done. I'll see you next time.